Good evening, I'm Cruz. Welcome to APTN National News. Two Indigenous members of Parliament called for an emergency debate in the House of Commons today on Jordan's Principle. Lori Idlaut and Leah Gazan says there's an urgent need for the emergency debate to address a national crisis for Indigenous children. However, the Speaker of the House said he was not satisfied the requests met the standing orders at this time. Idlaut says a backlog of applications combined with new restrictions on Jordan's Principle and Inuit Child First Initiative funding has had a harmful impact on the well-being of Indigenous children in Canada. In a letter to the Speaker of the House, Idlaut says there is an emerging food security crisis in Nunavut, caused in large part by the cancellation of a food voucher program in April that fed more than 15,000 Indigenous children. Gazan says Indigenous children have been cut off from educational supports and resources, including speech therapy and food security programming. She says children with medical issues are denied the funding to address unhealthy living conditions. The family of Jordan River Anderson are expected to take part in a blockade this weekend in Manitoba's Interlake region to address alleged mismanagement and corruption in Jordan's Principle. Idlaut says Indigenous children continue to be discriminated against.
The federal government unilaterally made changes without considering the impacts on First Nations and Inuit children, youth, and families. Changes to the requirements to access Jordan's Principle and Inuit Child First Initiative result in keeping First Nations and Inuit children in poverty and less healthy than non-Indigenous children.
And we will have more on this later in the show with NDP MP Leah Gazan. Manitoba Premier Wab Kinew says the province's wildfire situation is now very, very serious. This comes after residents in the northern city of Flin Flon received pre-evacuation notices yesterday evening. APTN reporter Sav Jonza has the details.
When it comes to wildfires, Manitoba currently has the highest fire activity in all of Canada, with flames burning 198,000 hectares of land so far. That's almost 3 times the area that historically burns for an entire year, but in just 1 month. Premier Wab Kinew says the devastation is unprecedented for the province.
In typical fire seasons, you would have one region having a challenge at a given time. It would be the east, it would be the north, it would be the west. This year, it's all the regions at the same time.
Early Wednesday, the Manitoba government held an update on the current human-caused blaze nearing the northwest city of Flin Flon. Officials said it began Monday on Saskatchewan's side of the border, but it couldn't be contained and it crossed into Manitoba on Tuesday. Now, Flin Flon's roughly 6,000 residents are preparing for a potential evacuation, and patients of the Flin Flon General Hospital are proactively being relocated. Priority wildfires near the town of Sheridan, as well as Lynn Lake and Marcel Colombe First Nation, have already caused states of emergencies and evacuations.
There is a concern with the shift of northwest winds that all of these fires in this region may travel towards communities in the next 24 hours.
There have been 96 wildfires in the province to date. 18 are currently active. Officials say all but 4 are confirmed or suspected to be caused by humans. Kinew says the fires continue to displace hundreds and hundreds of Manitobans from their homes. He says hotels are full, so communities will be asked to step up and provide shelter.
We want to underline the severity of the situation. We are not going to be calling for nothing. So if you do get a call from an official asking you to open your doors, whether it's a rec center or a larger facility or a building, we need you to take the call and to say yes.
Officials are telling people who are illegally flying private drones in the Flin Flon wildfire area to stop due to aerial collision risks with water bombing efforts. Those caught operating drones near wildfires could face a $100,000 fine or up to 2 years imprisonment. Sav Jonza, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
And some late breaking news tonight. The Pimicikamak Cree Nation, also known as Cross Lake in northern Manitoba, is preparing for a full evacuation now. Chief David Munias took to social media to tell his members to head toward the nearby Norway House Cree Nation, and that there are also buses for those without vehicles. And the city of Flin Flon is under an immediate mandatory evacuation order now. The city has posted on its website that people must leave the community by midnight tonight. Manitoba Kiwitanawi Okimiganak says they are in the process of evacuating up to 17,500 people from 4 First Nations in northern Manitoba. We'll have more on this story on tomorrow's noon newscast. And while Manitoba isn't the only province that is dealing with wildfires, they are continuing to burn across Western Canada as temperatures are rising and rainfall remains low, with evacuations underway as fires continue to spread. In BC, wildfires, both controlled and out of control, are burning northeast of Nelson, according to BC Wildfire Service. In Alberta, fires near Swan Hills have forced 1,300 people to evacuate. Much of the province is under a fire advisory, restriction, or ban due to dry conditions. In Saskatchewan, communities including Caribou Creek, Peter Ballantine Cree Nation, Canoe Lake Cree Nation, and Hall Lake have been evacuated. A fire ban is in place for vacant Crown land, provincial parks, and forests. The majority of active fires in Saskatchewan are currently believed to be human-caused. Saskatchewan has reported 200 wildfires so far this year, already 36 more fires than this time last year, according to the Saskatchewan Public Safety Agency. All provinces urge residents to check official safety sources for current updates, fire bans, and wildfire safety info. All-season roads, greater inclusion, accessibility, and environmental stewardship are just a few key findings in a new report released by the Assembly of First Nations. It's part 2 of a report called Benefits for All Canadians, Closing the Infrastructure Gap by 2030. The report was unveiled at a press conference in Ottawa by APTN National Chief Cindy Woodhouse-Neepanak. It outlines the long-term socio-economic benefits generated by closing the First Nations infrastructure gap. According to Woodhouse-Neepanak, investments in clean drinking water, education, infrastructure, and quality housing are key to getting there. Looking ahead to the new session of Parliament, the National Chief wants the reintroduction of the First Nations Clean Water Act to be the first order of business. That bill died when the election was called earlier this year.
Every single member of Parliament has a duty to First Nations children, whether you all represent First Nations in your, I don't know, one area that doesn't have a First Nation in it. You're all responsible for those little children. Think of that. If your kids are not having access to clean drinking water, and when you're playing with their lives like that with politics, shame on everyone. And so get it moving and get it going, and let's be realistic, and let's work through some of the things that we like and don't like out of that bill.
An ongoing residential school investigation in the Northwest Territories has Indigenous leadership calling for its completion. That story when we come back. Welcome back. Efforts to get an emergency debate on Jordan's Principle have so far failed, but the issue and the impact on Indigenous children remains. For more on what's happening with Jordan's Principle and why the House of Commons needs to move on the matter, we're joined now by NDP MP Leah Gazan. Leah, thank you so much for speaking with us today. You and Nunavut MP Lori Idlaut wanted to have an emergency debate on Jordan's Principle. What do you think has led to this critical juncture for Jordan's Principle?
Well, the whole administration of the program has been problematic from the get-go. Just this past May, they had over 140,000 case backlog. And then in the midst of all of it, they arbitrarily changed rules. for folks, making it difficult for groups that had been receiving funding to continue to receive funding. And, talking to service providers, the changes that they've made have been detrimental to particularly many kids in my riding who have benefited from services that have been funded through Jordan's Principle, assisting kids, for example, that are experiencing suicidality, kids that are experiencing food insecurity, and just supporting healthy families.
Leah, there are those, including the family of Jordan River Anderson, who allege that it was First Nation leadership that was mismanaging Jordan's Principle funding. What do you say to that?
Well, certainly this is in honor of Jordan Anderson's family. What I do have to say to that is, we have to recognize that the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal came out and accused the government of deliberately, mistreating Indigenous children with a two-tiered system, First Nations children. This is in response to that. I think about how many millions and billions, sometimes it's between $500 million to $1 billion they spend a year fighting Indigenous peoples in courts over things like resource extraction projects, or in this case, upholding the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal to stop racially discriminating against First Nations kids. So, I think instead of focusing on how organizations are spending the money, of course, accountability is important. Any sort of shifts or changes to the program need to be with Indigenous leaders, Indigenous service providers, not making arbitrary decisions without the voices of Indigenous peoples.
We've been hearing for months about programs being cut, positions not being funded, services not being provided. What would you like to see happen, Leah?
Well, let's be clear. I mean, the new Prime Minister's whole economic plan is dependent on the lands, territories, and resources of Indigenous peoples. Let's not forget that. It seems that this new government has put forward a throne speech that benefits the corporate elite, bankers, and developers, and is dependent on the lands, territories, and resources of Indigenous peoples. Yet we still have to beg to receive equal services as other people in Canada, whether it's the education of our children, whether it's the same sort of supports that are provided for other kids that live, for example, off reserve housing, clean drinking water. I think that the federal government has a list of things that could take priority over instead attacking Indigenous service providers who are providing life-saving services for Indigenous children and youth.
And finally, Leah, as you know, chiefs in Manitoba who have been asking to be reimbursed for expenses they paid for called for the removal of Patty Haidu as Indigenous Services Minister. How hopeful are you that there will be meaningful change with an Indigenous woman at the helm, Mandy Golmasti, as the ISC Minister?
Well, certainly, I wish the new minister the best of luck in her role. I think it all depends, of course, on the means and certainly the autonomy to be able to make decisions. And if the new Prime Minister is really serious about supporting Minister Mandy Golmasti in her role, then he'll provide the means, meaning the financial resources and the autonomy to make the decisions that she has to make to protect the human rights of Indigenous children and youth.
NDP MP Leah Gazan will have to leave it there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Deni National Chief George McKenzie is speaking out against an ongoing residential school investigation in the Northwest Territories that has so far stalled. Our APTN Yellowknife video journalist Bruce Dela Cruz has more.
St. Joseph's Residential School in Fort Resolution has been under investigation since 2022 after inquiries of the fate of 75 children who attended the school were made. Chief Louis Balsley of the Deni First Nation has expressed his concern over the handling of the investigation. Earlier this year, in February, he sent a letter to Northwest Territories Premier R.J. Simpson, calling out the term artifacts being used to describe the children's remains in an archaeology permit that was submitted to the chief. Deni National Chief George McKenzie has recently come out with a statement in support of the Deni First Nation. The Dene Nation demands the government of the Northwest Territories to respect the jurisdiction of Indigenous governments and enforce obligations directed to the coroner's office to complete these investigations, ensuring that the children who died while attending residential schools are treated with the dignity and respect they deserve. Bruce Dela Cruz, APTN National News, Yellowknife.
Before we head to the break, once again, here's Bruce Dela Cruz to give us the latest on what he's working on for later this week.
Hi there. I'm just doing some research for one of my upcoming stories. This week, I'll be covering the 20th anniversary of the Northwards Writers Festival. For the last 20 years, this festival has uplifted Northern and Indigenous voices through the use of book launches, panel discussions, and workshops. Tune in later this week as I sit down with some Indigenous authors flying up for the festival, and we talk about the impact that this festival has had on the literary world.
Thanks for staying with us. Time now for our photo of the day. Apple blossoms are in full bloom this spring. A big thanks to Crystal Summers from Algoma, Ontario, for sharing the signs of summer just north of Lake Huron. Don't be shy. Send us your spring photos to share at aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Time now for a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. On the east, Fredericton rain and 27, Charlottetown 26. Cartwright 7 and rain, Happy Valley Goose Bay partly cloudy and 15. Saguenay 29 and rain, Val-d'Or 26 and rain. Showers in Toronto at 19, Sault Ste. Marie 20. Thunder Bay 26, Timmins 26. The Paw 28, Norway House 27. Sunny and Gimli at 28, Winnipeg, sun and 29. 31 in Swift Current and sun, Yorkton 29 and sun. Smoky and Larange at 29, Buffalo Narrows, sunny there and 31. To the west, Peace River 30 and rain, Fort McMurray sun and 34. Showers in Calgary at 30, 29 showers there as well, 29 in Edmonton. Campbell River 19 and showers, Kamloops 26 and partly cloudy. 28 in Prince George, Smithers 14 and showers. Beaver Creek 15, Mayo 14. 25 in Wrigley, Fort Liard 21. Fort McPherson 18, Colville Lake 15. 8 in Whale Cove, Arviat 6. And Niqaluit 3, Clyde River 3 in sun. A residential school survivor from St'át'imc Nation in BC is launching a book about his experience tonight in Merritt, British Columbia. While his memoir, Hard to Be a Good Indian, is just one in a series of upcoming books, he tells APTN News it was a healing journey inspired by his own grandson. With more, here's APTN's T.R. Wheatley.
Tanemsha Arnie Narcisse shows his writing collections that he made about his 11 years in residential school. He started taking notes for his grandchild's benefit nearly a decade ago.
My grandson, his name is Montana Mountain Chief Jr., he was grade 3 at the time, and he came home, and apparently they were talking about Indian schools that day. And he came home and he asked me a simple question. He says, what did you do at the Indian school, Papa? And it was the first time I was asked this question. I've got 5 children. None of them asked me the question. Just let sleeping dogs lie, I suppose.
Narcisse told his grandson he had to think about it and began writing notes that same night.
Next night, few more. And over about a year, I came up with a book full of notes.
Narcisse showed his notes to his friend, who just happens to be the principal at a local school in the Stilatlium Nation near Lillooet, British Columbia. This past year, Narcisse says his friend told him he wanted to turn the notes into a book. That book is now called Hard to Be a Good Indian, and Narcisse is preparing for his first book launch. His memoir starts with the day he was taken from home at 6 years old to attend the St. Joseph's Mission in Williams Lake. He goes on to write about a brawl that saw him transferring to a different residential school.
My time there ended with a big brawl between a number of nations. What that did, it brought the realization to the church and to the school that you couldn't go mixing all these different tribes of Indians together. So they sent us to Kamloops, and that's how I ended up over in Kamloops.
He spent the bulk of his time at Kamloops Residential School, 8 years in total. Narcisse says his book covers a wide range of topics that will resonate with people. A big one, he says, connecting the dots to understand that the actions of today are a direct correlation to what happened at these schools.
That experience and all of the experiences we're going on in our communities right now, all of the social issues, social problem, you name a problem, you can point right back to the Indian school as being the origin of that problem. And that's what I'm hoping.
Hoping for some empathy and understanding along the way, and for more people to work toward answering the 91 calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation final report. T.R. Wheatley, APTN National News.
And an emergency alert has just been issued in Manitoba. It reads, in part, due to rapidly spreading wildfires and extreme fire conditions, Manitoba has declared a provincial state of emergency. Multiple wildfires are threatening many communities and infrastructure. We'll have more news on this in our new newscast tomorrow. From all of us at APTN National News, hi miigwech masicho kwana. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again tomorrow for our noon show. We'll leave you now with more sights and sounds of Indigenous people interacting with King and Queen on their 2 days in Ottawa from earlier this week.
I would like to acknowledge that we are gathered on the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. It is my great hope that in each of your communities and